Take off shame and shyness, pretty ones, beauties abound, free smiles, careless laughs, in this fair of no rules. These lines are from a poem by the national poet of Bangladesh, Qazi Nazrul Islam. The poem celebrates the Persian New Year holiday of Nowruz. But why is the national poet of Bangladesh talking about the Persian New Year? To understand why, we have to look at the once powerful influence of Persianate culture.
Farsi, or Persian today, is the official language of Iran, but also is the official language of Afghanistan and Tajikistan, albeit under different dialect names, Dari in Afghanistan and Tajik in Tajikistan. However, in the pre-modern period, the Persian language was central to a powerful cosmopolitan sense of identity, often called Persianate culture. Persianate culture may have begun with ethnic Persians, but transcended them to encompass a diverse array of peoples across Anatolia, the Near East, the Caucasus, Iran, Central Asia, and South Asia, who were connected by the Persian language, culture, and customs. Persianate culture was born in the Iranian intermezzo. In the 7th century, a pivotal moment came when the Arab Muslims dramatically conquered the once mighty Sassanid Persian Empire. After a few centuries of Arab rule, during the Abbasid period, famous for starting the Islamic Golden Age, in itself heavily influenced by the Persians, regional rulers gradually acquired more autonomy. In the Khorasan region, comprising modern-day eastern Iran, southern Uzbekistan, and Afghanistan, new kingdoms like the Saffarids, Samanids, and Ghaznavids would adopt a uniquely Persian Islamic identity. Key to this identity was the Farsi language, or modern-day Persian, which arose from the heavy Arabic influence on Middle Persian, which was spoken in the Sassanid Empire. The Samanids and the Ghaznavids would heavily promote Persian literature. Patronized by the Samanids, the poet Rudaki, using the Arabic Qasida poetry form, was the first major poet to write in New Persian. This period's most important work was the Shahnameh, written by the Ghaznavid-sponsored poet Firdausi, which recounted the pre-Islamic era of kings and preserved many ancient Persian words. Wielding the ethos of the Shahnameh, many Persian Islamic dynasties legitimized their rule by claiming descent from ancient Persian kings. For example, the Buyids, an Iranian Islamic dynasty, wrote Arabic inscriptions in the ruins of Persepolis to legitimize their rule through the ancient Iranian past. This new synthesis between Islam and Persian culture proved highly dynamic and cosmopolitan, causing Persian culture to spread with Islam. The first example of this was when the Samanid dynasty's Turkic slave soldiers seized power and established the Ghaznavid dynasty. These Turkic rulers became Persianized and enthusiastically promoted Persian culture, like Firdausi's Shahnameh. As Central Asian Turks embraced Islam, they also embraced Persian culture, since it was viewed as prestigious with a long, ancient imperial history. The Turks may have militarily conquered the Persians, but the Persians culturally conquered the Turks. Migrating from Central Asia, the Turkic nomads carried this Persian Islamic culture. In the east, these Persian Turks invaded India, establishing the Delhi Sultanate. In the west, the Turks established the large Seljuk Empire, predecessors to the Ottomans. While both these polities had Turkic ruling and military elites, ethnic Persians largely staffed the bureaucracy and dominated the intelligentsia and the ulama, the Islamic clergy. Accordingly, both the Seljuks and the Delhi Sultanate heavily promoted Persian culture. The Mongol conquests devastated the Iranian heartland, which further pushed Persian scholars, saints, and intellectuals to the frontier regions of Anatolia and South Asia. Beyond the Delhi Sultanate in South India, the small Deccan sultanates were also profoundly influenced by Persianate culture. In the 1500s, the Mughal conquest by yet another group of Persianized Turks further increased Persian language production in South Asia. With the economic backdrop of the Silk Road and the Indian Ocean trade facilitating cultural exchange, Persianate culture was propagated through Sufi orders like the Naqshbandis and Chishtis, who converted local populations to Islam, using the Persian language to express Sufism, the mystical dimension of Islam. While Arabic was still preferred for theological and philosophical works, Persian was used as the court language and for records, histories, and literature. For diverse regions like South Asia, with a wide array of languages, Persian served as a lingua franca. Beyond language, these kingdoms modeled their courts and bureaucracy after the pre-Islamic Sassanids and witnessed cultural exchange in art, architecture, music, clothing, and food. Despite being Muslim and not ethnically Persian, these cosmopolitan elites across the Persianate realm still revered the Shahnameh and the pre-Islamic era of Persian kings. One crucial part of Persianate culture was Persian poetry, renowned for its beauty and sophistication by combining the romantic and the spiritual. Persian poetry was often, but not always, infused with mystical Sufi Islam. By looking at history's greatest Persian poets, we can appreciate just how cosmopolitan Persianate culture was, surpassing far beyond modern-day Iran's borders. Obviously, the earliest Persian poets, like Rudaki and Ferdowsi, were in the Khorasan region on Iran's periphery. Another famous Ghaznavid poet was Hakim Sinai, who died in Ghazni in modern-day Afghanistan. Now Rumi, perhaps the most popular Sufi Persian poet, was born in Balkh in Afghanistan, but he fled the Mongol invasions and was patronized by the breakaway Seljuk Sultanate of Rum in Anatolia, where he lived most of his life. Sheikh al-Islam of the Seljuks, Rumi founded the Mevlevi Sufi order, famous for its whirling dervishes. Beloved across Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, and beyond, Rumi has become a cross-cultural figure, emblematic of Persianate culture's cosmopolitan spirit. The Shakespeare of Persian literature, Nizami, famous for his Kamsa, which versified tales like Laila al-Majnun and Shirin Khusrau, actually lived in Ganja in modern-day Azerbaijan. Another legendary poet was Amir Khusrau, the court poet of the Delhi Sultanate, a figure attributed with developing both the Hindustani classical and Qawwali musical traditions by combining Persian and Indian musical traditions. Even today, Indian and Pakistani artists recite Khusrau's Farsi ghazals and Qawwalis. Highly regarded was also Baitul Delavi, the Mughal Persian poet laureate. The sheer amount of Persian poetry crystallized into a style called Sabke Hindi, or the Indian style, which is critiqued by Iranian Persians as too complex and heady. In British India, the poet Allama Iqbal, or Iqbal Lahori, in addition to his much-loved Urdu poetry, wrote many of his major works in Persian, which were even recited during the Iranian Revolution. While faithful to the classical Persian mystical style of Rumi, Iqbal's poetry tackled modern topics like Islamic reform, modernity, colonialism, and nationalism. Persian poetry even spread to non-Muslims. In the Mughal court, Hindu bureaucrats extensively used Persian, and Hindu epics like the Ramayana were translated into Persian with elaborate illustrations. In particular, Chandraban Brahmin was an accomplished Hindu Persian poet in the Mughal Empire. In the Caucasus, Sayat Nova was a famous Armenian poet who wrote in Persian in addition to Armenian, Azeri, and Georgian. The patronage of Persian poetry was incredibly widespread. Widely regarded as Iran's national poet, Hafez could have easily become the national poet of Bengal when he was invited to the Sultan of Bengal's court. Unable to travel, Hafez sent a poem to the Sultan, which contained the following couplet.
شکر شکن شوند همه طوطیان هند زین قند پارسی که به بنگال می رود.
All the parrots of Hind have become sugar-shattering that this Persian candy arrives to Bengal. This couplet perfectly captures the influence of Persianate culture on Bengal and the wider South Asian region overall. As we can see, Persian poetry far transcended the borders of either modern-day Iran or Afghanistan. Another clear evidence of Persianate culture's reach was the widespread celebration of the New Year holiday Nowruz, originally rooted in pre-Islamic Zoroastrianism. Despite the aversion to celebrating pre-Islamic holidays among some Muslims, the holiday was Islamicized, with traditions existing of the Prophet Muhammad and Imam Ali accepting Nowruz gifts and other traditions connecting Nowruz to important Islamic events like Ali's birthday. This integration of pre-Islamic Persian culture with Islam allowed Nowruz to spread to Central Asia and South Asia. The Mughals and the Ottomans celebrated Nowruz with great fanfare and state celebrations, while Muslim Indian traders carried the Nowruz holiday to East Africa. Even today, Nowruz is a widespread holiday celebrated by not only Iran, but also Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, the Kurdish people, the Uyghurs, Swahilis, Bektashi Sufis in the Balkans, and Parsis and Shias in South Asia. Each of these groups celebrate the holiday uniquely, according to their local culture, illustrating the beautiful multiculturalism inherent in Persian culture. The cosmopolitan Persian culture was not limited to the bubble of the court, but profoundly enriched regional cultures, much like how Latin and Greek influenced Western languages, or Sanskrit with Indian languages. Persian exerted a tremendous influence on languages in the Persianate world. Turkic languages like Turkish, Azeri, Uzbek, and Uyghur, and Caucasian languages like Armenian and Georgian all contain large amounts of Persian loanwords. Similarly, South Asian languages like Hindustani, Bengali, Punjabi, Marathi, Gujarati, and Sindhi all have a strong amount of Persian loanwords and grammatical structures. In particular, Hindustani was a sort of hybrid elite language that arose in the court of the Delhi Sultanate, where the Sanskrit origin Braj Bhasha heavily mixed with Persian. This Hindustani or Hindavi language also went by the name Urdu, which is Turkic for camp, reflecting the origins of the language from the diverse military camp of Muslim emperors. Persian loanwords can be especially found in words relating to the military and court, with many rulers using Persian royal titles like Shah and Shahanshah for king, Khatun, Khanum, Begum for consort, and spiritual titles like Pir and Khaja. Since Islam spread to these places through the Persian medium, words for prayer and fasting became namaz and roza instead of the Arabic salah and saum, and behest and dozak for heaven and hell instead of jahannam and jannah. Nevertheless, many Arabic loanwords still entered these languages through Persian. Furthermore, poetry in these languages was influenced by Persian poetry styles like the ghazal and rubaiyat. To give an example of one language, Bengali has over 5,000 words of Persian origin. Many of these words have undergone a dramatic shift to a more indigenous pronunciation. For instance, the word for soft in Persian is narm, which has become norom in Bengali. Similarly, the word for hot is garm in Persian, which has become gorom in Bengali. Zamindar in Persian means landlord, and in Bengal, this was used to describe the feudal lord that dominated Bengali agrarian society. Persianate culture declined in the modern period for a number of reasons. Firstly, after the Safavid Empire imposed Shi'ism, Iran became isolated from the Muslim world due to sectarian tensions, especially from the Ottomans. Regardless, the Mughals and the Ottomans gradually shifted from promoting Persian culture to their national cultures of Hindi and Ottoman Turkish, respectively. Another major factor was colonialism, as European powers partitioned and isolated parts of the Persianate world. In British India, the colonial authorities replaced Persian with English and Hindavi for the administration, a move which was protested fiercely by both Muslim and Hindu bureaucrats. With South Asia once producing more Persian poetry than Iran itself, British colonialism now robbed South Asians of their connection to traditional Persianate culture. During the period of decolonization, nationalism further crippled the cosmopolitan nature of Persianate culture. In Iran, nationalists redefined Persian as exclusively belonging to the Iranian nation-state and emphasized the pre-Islamic period. Some scholars term this nationalism as dislocative nationalism, where the Arab invasion of Iran is supposed to have permanently destroyed Persian culture and initiated a dark age. This highly essentialist reading of history is quite at odds with the profound expansion of Persian culture that occurred during the Islamic period. And the 1979 revolution further isolated Iran from the world due to its aggressive foreign policy and promotion of Shia Islam over Persianate culture. Meanwhile, in Afghanistan, a historic center of Persian culture, the Pashtun-dominated national elites promoted Dari as the name for the Afghan dialect of Persian to distance Persian speakers from Iran and towards a national Afghan identity. In Turkey, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk banned Sufi orders and implemented radical language reforms, which attempted to purify Turkish of any Persian or Arabic loanwords. This is why other Turkic languages like Azeri and Uzbek have much more Persian. To suppress its minority Kurdish culture, the Turkish nationalist state also banned Nowruz until the 1990s. Similarly, the historic incubators of Persian culture of Samarkand and Bukhara, due to Soviet imperialism, were artificially placed in the Republic of Uzbekistan, which suppressed Persian Tajik culture in favor of a national Uzbek-Turkic identity. As a part of their policy of state atheism, the Soviet communists also banned the Nowruz holiday and the Sufi orders in Central Asia. While in South Asia, tensions between Muslims and Hindus artificially split the language of Hindavi or Hindustani into Urdu and Hindi, where Urdu was identified with Muslims written in the Perso-Arabic script, while Hindi was identified with Hindus written in the Devanagari script. Particularly in India, the ascendant Hindu nationalists have clung to Hindi and emphasized Sanskrit-based words while erasing Persian words, which are viewed as alien infiltrations. The final attack on Persianate culture came with the rise of Salafism, backed by the Gulf Arab petrodollars, which pushed an aggressively Puritan form of Islam, which attacked and displaced local forms of Islam, deeply connected to Sufism and Persianate culture. Salafis declared traditions rooted in Persianate culture, like Sufism, Qawwali, and Nowruz, as un-Islamic innovations to be prohibited. A subtle example can be seen in the Islamist dictator Zia-ul-Haq in Pakistan, encouraging the use of the more Arabic Allah Hafez to replace the traditional Persianate Khuda Hafez. In line with the Salafi trend, the Taliban regime in Afghanistan has banned Nowruz and music while restricting Sufism. Today, Persianate culture has greatly declined, no doubt, but its influence still endures. Turkic and South Asian language speakers still use many Persian loanwords, often unconsciously, due to a nativized pronunciation of these words. Moreover, artists in the Qawwali tradition still often recite Persian poetry from the greats like Amir Khusrau, but in a South Asian accent.